The water is rising. It is a simple fact. It is happening slowly, almost invisibly, but it is happening everywhere, all at once. The great blue expanse that covers most of our planet is swelling. It is creeping up our beaches. It is pushing into our cities. It is threatening the way we live. For centuries, humanity has built its empires along the coast. We have thrived on the ocean's bounty. We have relied on its pathways for trade. The coast is where the action is. It is where the money is. Now the very water that gave us life is turning against us. The flood is coming, not as a single dramatic event, but as a slow, relentless tide that will reshape our world. This isn't a problem for some distant future. It's not a problem for our grandchildren to solve. It's happening right now. Today is September 12, 2025. All around the globe, the signs are clear. King tides, once a rare curiosity, now regularly spill into the streets of Miami. Charleston, Pacific Island nations watch. Their ancestral lands are swallowed by the sea, inch by lonely inch. Farmers in the Mekong Delta see their rice paddies poisoned by salt water. This is the quiet emergency. The crisis that doesn't always make the headlines but is steadily redrawing the map of our planet. We are living in a new geological era, one defined by the steady advance of the ocean. The significance of this cannot be overstated. To understand why the ocean is rising, you have to understand a fundamental truth. The planet is getting hotter. Our modern world runs on burning fossil fuels, coal oil, natural gas. This process releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. These gases act like a blanket, trapping heat from the sun and causing the Earth's temperature to climb. This warming is the engine driving sea level rise, and it does so in two primary ways. It is simple physics playing out on a planetary scale. The first and most significant driver is thermal expansion. When things get warmer, they expand. Oceans absorb more than 90% of the extra heat, and the water itself is warming up. This warming increases the volume of the ocean. Even a tiny increase in temperature when spread across the vastness of the world's oceans results in a noticeable rise in sea level. The second major cause is the melting of land-based ice. The Earth has enormous reserves of frozen water locked away in glaciers and ice sheets, primarily in Greenland, Antarctica. As global air and ocean temperatures rise, this ice is melting at an accelerating rate. Think of them as two giant ice cubes sitting on a countertop. As they melt, the water flows off the land and into the ocean, adding a massive volume of new water that wasn't there before. If the Greenland ice sheet were to melt completely, it would raise global sea levels by about 7 meters. The rising sea is a global phenomenon, but it does not affect all places equally. Some regions are sinking, some are more exposed, some are simply too poor to adapt. From crowded Asian megacities to historic European ports and American economic hubs, the list of places in peril is long and growing. These are not abstract dots on a map, they are homes to hundreds of millions of people. They are centers of global commerce and culture. Asia is ground zero. The continent is home to many of the world's most vulnerable coastal populations. Cities like Jakarta, Bangkok, and Ho Chi Minh City are not only low-lying but are also sinking due to excessive groundwater extraction, a phenomenon called subsidence. This creates a devastating 1-2 punch. The land goes down as the sea comes up. In the United States, the Atlantic and Gulf coasts are hotspots. Miami, Florida is a poster child for the crisis. A city built on porous limestone that allows seawater to bubble up from below, making traditional seawalls ineffective. New Orleans, still scarred by Hurricane Katrina, lives in the shadow of a rising Gulf of Mexico, protected by a massive but ultimately finite system of levees. New York City, the financial capital of the world, saw its vulnerability laid bare by Hurricane Sandy in 2012. And then there are the places with nowhere to go. Entire nations, the low-lying atoll states of the Pacific Ocean like Kiribati, Tuvalu, and the Marshall Islands, face existential threats. For them, sea level rise is not a matter of economics or infrastructure, it is a matter of national survival. The impacts of rising seas go far beyond flooded streets and wet basements. They are deep and systemic, touching every aspect of life for coastal communities. The most visible impact is the increase in flooding, especially during high tides and storms. What used to be a once-in-a-century flood now happens every few years or even multiple times a year in some places. This nuisance flooding disrupts daily life. It closes roads, damages cars, overwhelms drainage systems, and forces businesses to shut down. Economically, the toll is staggering. Coastal properties lose value as flood risk becomes an undeniable reality. insurance premiums skyrocket or coverage becomes unavailable altogether. Critical infrastructure, ports, power plants, wastewater treatment facilities, airports sits in harm's way. Saltwater intrusion threatens drinking water supplies for millions. In agricultural regions like the Mekong Delta in Vietnam, the Nile Delta in Egypt, saltwater poisons fertile farmland, devastating livelihoods, and threatening food security for entire nations. The environmental consequences are just as severe. Salt marshes, mangrove forests, coral reefs act as natural barriers. Ultimately, the highest cost is a human one. People are being displaced. Communities that have lived by the sea for generations are being forced to retreat. This loss is not just about houses and land, it is about the loss of culture, community, and identity. If you talk to people in Venice, they'll tell you all about the acqua alta, or the high water. For centuries, Venetians have lived with the seasonal flooding of their city. It was really just part of the rhythm of life. But now, that rhythm, well, it's changed. The floods are more frequent, more severe, and honestly, they can come at all times of the year now. Shopkeepers on the ground floor of those historic buildings install steel barriers in their doorways, almost like a daily ritual of defense. The city itself has kind of become a living laboratory for dealing with rising water. A beautiful, fragile masterpiece that's slowly sinking into the lagoon. To respond, the city has built one of the most ambitious and controversial engineering projects in the world, MOSE. It's a system of 78 massive inflatable floodgates, positioned at the 3 inlets to the Venetian lagoon. When a dangerously high tide is forecast, compressed air is pumped into the gates, causing them to rise up from the seabed and form a temporary barrier to hold back the Adriatic Sea. It's honestly a marvel of modern engineering, a real testament to human ingenuity. But at the same time, it's also incredibly expensive, has been plagued by corruption, and its long-term effectiveness, especially with sea levels rising faster and faster, is a subject of pretty intense debate. For now, it buys Venice some time, but, well, no one really knows how much. Half a world away in the coastal communities of the Netherlands, the approach is, pretty different. The Dutch have been battling the sea for like 1,000 years. There's a famous saying, God created the world, but the Dutch created the Netherlands. A third of their country actually lies below sea level. Their response isn't just about building higher walls, it's a philosophy that's really embedded in their national identity. They've developed a multi-layered approach that combines hard infrastructure, massive dikes, storm surge barriers, with a revolutionary concept called room for the river. Instead of just fighting the water, they're learning to live with it. The Room for the River program is, honestly, a paradigm shift. Instead of endlessly raising dikes, the Dutch are strategically giving land back to the water. They're relocating dikes inland, creating floodplains, lowering groins, and digging secondary channels to give overflowing rivers more space. This not only reduces flood risk for cities downstream, but it also creates valuable new nature reserves. Faced with the relentless advance of the sea, our first instinct is often to build. We are engineers, toolmakers. We build walls. All around the world, cities are investing billions in hard engineering solutions. Seawalls, dikes, levees, storm surge barriers in London, the Thames Barrier, rotating gates protects against North Sea storm surges. In Japan, towering concrete seawalls, some were overtopped by the 2011 tsunami. These structures are feats of human power, visible symbols of our determination to defend our territory. These hard defenses can be effective, at least for a time. They can protect trillions of dollars of assets and save lives. A well-designed levee system can keep a city dry during a storm. A seawall can prevent daily tidal flooding. But they come with significant drawbacks. They are incredibly expensive to build, and even more expensive to maintain and upgrade. A wall built for today's flood risk will be too low in 20 years. They also create a false sense of security, encouraging more development in high-risk areas, the levee effect. When these defenses fail, the consequences are catastrophic. Hard armor often destroys the very coastline it is meant to protect. Seawalls reflect wave energy scouring the beach and causing it to vanish. This process, coastal squeeze, eliminates the intertidal zone, a critical habitat for many species. It cuts off public access to the shore, replacing a living, dynamic coastline with a sterile concrete barrier. In trying to save a piece of land, we often kill the ecosystem that makes it valuable. We trade a natural, resilient shoreline for a brittle, artificial one. It is a bargain that often leaves us poorer in the long run. Instead of building concrete walls, a growing movement is looking to nature for answers. These are the soft or nature-based solutions which aim to work with natural processes rather than against them. The idea is to restore and enhance the coastal ecosystems that have been protecting shorelines for millennia. These living shorelines are more resilient, more adaptable, and often more cost-effective than their concrete counterparts. The first line of natural defense is the restoration of coastal wetlands, salt marshes, mangrove forests. These ecosystems are incredible shock absorbers. Their dense networks of roots and vegetation bind the soil together, preventing erosion. They act like a giant sponge, soaking up floodwaters and dissipating the energy of waves before they can reach inland communities. A healthy mangrove forest can reduce the height of storm waves by more than 60%. By restoring these habitats, replanting mangroves, removing barriers to tidal flow, and rebuilding marshes, we can create a self-repairing living barrier that also provides critical habitat for fish and wildlife and improves water quality. Another powerful nature-based solution is the creation and restoration of oyster reefs, coral reefs. Oyster reefs, once abundant along many coastlines, form complex three-dimensional structures that act as natural breakwaters. They calm the water behind them, allowing sediment to build up and marshes to grow. Similarly, healthy coral reefs in tropical regions are the most effective coastal barriers on the planet, capable of breaking up to 97% of wave energy. Adaptation is necessary. We have to build walls, restore marshes, plan our retreat from the most vulnerable areas. We have locked in a certain amount of sea level rise and we must prepare for it. But adaptation alone is a losing game. It is a strategy of perpetual and increasingly expensive defense. No matter how high we build our walls, the water will keep rising to meet them, and eventually, to top them. The only way to truly win this fight, the only way to protect our future and the future of our coastal cities, is to stop the problem at its source. We have to stop warming the planet. This means we must dramatically and rapidly reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. The primary culprit is the burning of fossil fuels for energy. Therefore, the core of the solution is a global transition to clean, renewable energy sources. We need to replace coal-fired power plants with solar farms and wind turbines. We need to switch from gasoline-powered cars to electric vehicles. We need to make our buildings more energy efficient and upgrade our electrical grids to handle a new generation of clean power. The technology to do this already exists. It is getting cheaper and more efficient every year. What is lacking is not the technology, but the political will to deploy it at the necessary scale and speed. This transition is not just about stopping something bad, it is about building something better. A world powered by clean energy will be a world with cleaner air, quieter cities, and greater energy independence. It will create millions of new jobs in industries like solar installation, battery manufacturing, and grid modernization. It is an opportunity to rebuild our economy on a more sustainable and equitable foundation.